Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Chaps Chat Cats, a part of the Hoops Crew Media Network. My name's Jake, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by Sambo and Johnny. How are you, chaps?
Pretty good.
Yeah, very well, very well. How are you, Jake?
I am fighting through it. Got after our weekend away in Geelong, came back, got a cold. And yeah, fighting through it. We're soldiering on. Got fishermen's friends up the wazoo, which is probably not the most effective way to use them. But on the show tonight, chaps. Yeah. Bless there. We've got Cats v Power round 9 recap. Lots of stuff to dig into there, and I want to handball to you, chaps, as quickly as possible. I will do a little summary for anyone who happened to be living under a rock or just needs a refresher. It was Friday night, so sometimes, it's hard to remember exactly how things went down. But before we get into the show, a couple of quick bits of housekeeping. We want to thank our network sponsor, Valhalla Brewing. Unfortunately, did not get time to dive into the brew hall or the tap room on Friday night down in Geelong, but I would love to, and you should too if you're around. So if you're in North Geelong, get along to the brew hall. If you're in the CBD, get along to the tap room. We love having Valhalla Brewing on board as our network sponsor, and we thank them massively. So on the show this evening, as I said, it's the recap of Cats and Power. And then for our Patreon subscribers, we're going to dive into a Patreon player focus on Tyson Stengel. So if you want to get that extended part of the podcast, make sure you go on over and sign up for a 7-day free trial on the Hoops Crew Patreon channel. You get early access to Paul's Behind the Play interviews. You get a Wednesday news wrap from myself and Ben. You get exclusive VFL men's and women's coverage of the Cats teams, as well as the extended previews and recaps that we do. So enough with all that, chaps. Let's get into it. The Cats, their comeback falls just short on Friday night against the Power, and this is how it went down. See if I can get the recap in like 2 minutes. So things started as badly as you probably could have envisaged as a Cats fan. Port put a goal on the board through Jason Horne-Francis after 2 minutes, 43 seconds. They followed that a minute and a half later with a goal to Willie Rioli. He'd kick a few of those on Friday night. In fact, he kicked another one just a couple of minutes later. And all of a sudden, when Mitch Georgiades goaled after 9 minutes, 16 seconds, Port Adelaide had 4 goals on the board. Now, the Cats responded with 2 to Gary Rowan and Tyson Stengel, but Port Adelaide were relentless. They added another goal to Todd Marshall at 21 minutes, 46 seconds. They added another to Ollie Wines after 27 minutes, 57 seconds. The Cats pegged it back again with a goal to Brad Close after 30 minutes and 17 seconds. And standing in the standing room area, as you do, at KP, Sambo said to me, well, that must just be about the quarter. And we said, well, that must just be about the quarter. Chaps, for another 6 minutes, as the quarter raged on to 36 minutes and 2 seconds. And in that time, Jeremy Finlayson and Darcy Byrne-Jones added 2 goals for Port. And those, when we reflect back on it shortly, proved to be pretty crucial scores. We hoped the Cats would turn it around early in the second quarter, but they didn't. Port goal again, Darcy Byrne-Jones after 2 and a bit minutes. Willie Rioli after 4 minutes 40, and another goal to Kane Farrell after 9 minutes 44 seconds. The Cats were down, I think it was 70-21, and the mood was turning very, very sour at Kardinia Park. The Cats, through Tom Hawkins, slotting a beautiful goal tight in on the boundary, got one back. Brian Myers pegged the second one back. Unfortunately, Port Adelaide were able to respond through Zach Butters, and that meant the margin at halftime was 12-5-77 to 5-6-36, a 41-point deficit. But Geelong, champion club, a champion team, and they responded as such in the third term. They had started to turn the tide in the second half of the second quarter. They put the first 2 goals on the board early in the third term, both to Tyson Stengel. But then Port always able to peg a goal back. Kane Farrell at the 10.5-minute mark. The Cats got one through Jeremy Cameron, but that was immediately pegged back by Willie Rioli. And 22.5 minutes through the third term, there was probably a bit of a feeling that if we just could have kicked 3 in a row and stopped Port getting back into it every time we kicked a couple, then we'd be right in it. And then all of a sudden, Geelong did what they'd been able to do previously, and they kicked 3 in the space of 5 minutes. Brad Close, Zach Guthrie, and Ollie Dempsey, and the mood around the ground had lifted, had changed. Suddenly, a charge seemed inevitable. Port kicked the first goal of the last quarter, and you wondered if Geelong, the fight might go out of them. It didn't. The Cats ended the game with the next 3 goals to Ollie Henry, to Gary Rowan and Tyson Stengel, and had a bunch of other chances in between. Ultimately, they fall short. 14-11-95 to 15-11, 101. Sambo, I'm going to shoot a hand pass to you first and then straight to you, Johnny. But just your general thoughts, takeaways being at the game, obviously for you, Sambo. What were your sort of initial takeaways, gents?
I mean, I was pretty positive even right after the game. It all sort of dissipated a little bit. Certainly was probably not super positive during the first and second quarters. But it was all sort of just part and parcel of the experience, and it never really felt like we were out of it. Even when we were all the way down, I just still had this, this blessed feeling that you get from being a Cats fan, where you just always kind of assume it's going to turn around, and you're going to win. You're like, oh, this is a different script than usual, but I'm sure it'll end the same. Um, and so I guess I didn't get too down in the dumps at any point during the game. Certainly frustrated, frustrated at decisions, frustrated at opposition players who were having a good night. But as we generally do, tried not to get frustrated at the Cats or any particular players that might have been having an off night. And I think the fact that we really won 2.5 of the last 3 quarters helped me come away with it, away from it rather, with quite a positive spin on it. That first quarter obviously was, as positive as we keep it. That first quarter was about as bad as I've seen. Definitely the worst that I've seen this year. And even compared to last year, maybe like I think last year and even against Melbourne last week, a lot of those losses were similar where you kind of went, oh, we're just a little bit off in a lot of key areas. Whereas that first quarter felt like we were a long way off in a couple of areas. It was a very different kind of being off, probably off by about the same percentage, but it was miles off in a few areas rather than just a little bit off in a lot of areas. And also Port, credit to them, they laid an absolute ambush for the opening of that game, and they sprung the trap to perfection. Um, Good on them. Good on their fans. I was saying to you guys after the game, I was like, imagine if you had traveled down from Adelaide for this and they won. Like it's going to be it's early in the season and everything, and everyone loves to dismiss that stuff, but that'd be a really memorable moment if you'd made that journey down and got to see the win. So I did have that sort of silver lining kind of outlook on it as well. But as far as the game goes, I was really proud of how the Cats came back and how they fought, how they didn't let it get on top of them once sort of righted the ship midway through the second quarter. Um, I thought they had a lot of grit to get to where they went, and I'm not too mad, to be honest.
Sorry,
Johnny?
yeah. Oh,
Johnny,
obviously, I was
I
I
am
was
mad.
home alone.
Oh, that's yeah, okay.
Wasn't at the game, so I was a bit less I was a bit more unhinged than what you guys were, most likely, as my
Oh
wife
no,
would
we
tell
were
us today.
unhinged in the game.
Um,
I've never booed. I've
Utterly
always been an
unhinged.
anti-booer, and I booed at one point. And I said to Jake, I was like, I don't give a shit. I'm booing.
um, but yeah, that I'll say first quarter and most of that second quarter was definitely, I was like, what am I watching at the moment? It just looked like the Cats, and it just looked like they weren't there at the moment. And Port Adelaide, they came prepared with a game plan, and they went with it and just took the Cats by surprise. And I think the one thing that annoyed me the most or got under my skin the most was, unlike the loss to Melbourne last week, was when they came in, they had a game plan against the Cats, executed how to stop us. I felt like Port Adelaide didn't have a game plan to stop us. They were just playing their game plan against ours, and unfortunately, they were switched on from the start. The Cats weren't, which was probably the one thing that got under my skin the most, was that just didn't seem fully there from the start. But as the game went on, they really turned it back on and got right back into it and showed that how good they really are and how professional and systematic they are. That no matter what the margin is, there's always that glimmer. There's always that hope that they can come back and win it. They nearly did. It was it was a roller coaster of a night. Exciting, heartbreaking at some points, frustrations. But at the end of the day, like you, Sam, at the end of the game, I was like, oh well, that was that. It can't get much worse than that first and a bit of that second quarter. Like, to go even worse than that would be, I don't think that would happen again. I think the Cats would have looked back at that footage and gone, that's not how we played a game. That's not what we are putting out there as a club. So I can't see that happening again. But if that is the absolute worst of the Cats, we got to see some of the best of the Cats as well during this game, especially in that third and fourth quarter. So the way they finished it was fantastic. Like the way you want to finish it after getting belted, getting smashed all around the ball, around the clearances everywhere. They fought back. They nearly got the win. Port celebrated like they won a final. And the Cats will go, we've got a few things to work on, but we know that we can fight back from the brink of almost a smashing. So well done to the Cats.
I thought that Chris Scott's press conference would have been you could have pretty much just listened to that, and that was a pretty great recap of the game. Like, a key area I thought he touched on was, because there's a lot made, like, I don't know if was it umpire appreciation round? Like, I
That's what I've seen
personally
on socials.
I don't think that the umpiring made a material impact on the outcome of the game. I know people will point to that advantage rule. I think they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. Sometimes the umpires, because everyone said they should have called back the one in the grand final for Brisbane. It's a very fine line. Having said that, though, I don't know. Yeah, Chris Scott nailed it really well in his presser. That there's just issues. It's such a hard game to umpire, and there's so much that players can get away with. And you can see just players throwing the ball out of a tackle over and over again. You can see players just being pushed in the back off the ball. And there was a lot of warranted crowd frustration. But let's be honest, some of that spilled over from the fact of the frustration at how the result was going with how we were playing early. And just to get back to what Chris Scott said early on, was some basic skill execution errors really cost us early in the game. And it's funny, I knew exactly what he was talking about. There was 2 attacks early in the match where Geelong looked like they were going to go straight up the field and score, and we either just missed kicks or we dropped marks inside or around the attacking 50, and Port whisked it away back up the field and scored. And you just wonder what happens if those marks are taken, if those kicks are hit, and we kick a couple of early goals. Maybe everyone just settles in a little bit. It's harder for Port to break loose, if they're having to work from the kick out, and things are different. But I definitely think yeah, there was definitely some skill errors from Geelong early that cost us. But I was really pleased, chaps, and either one of you can pick at this. I was really pleased that they made a tactical change early. Now I'll say some of the crap that has been said about both Reece Stanley and Tom Hawkins and Tom Stewart from Cats fans is absolutely abhorrent, and I reckon you should be bloody ashamed of yourself with some of the ways
Mm.
some fans have conducted. It's one thing to critique some of the abuse that was hurled Tom Stewart's way from some people in the standing area was really quite effing embarrassing, in my opinion. I understand everyone's frustrated, but jeez Louise, like, but as I said, you guys take whoever wants to take a little pick at this, and it is that the Cats made a sub early. They ripped Reece Stanley out. Wasn't having a brilliant night, but also probably a position that you were happy for Blix to go in and cover, and we got O'Sheen Mullen in, and I thought that was on the money from the Cats to make that change as early as possible.
Yeah, I think said it well that, you know, hurling, critiquing a player and plays is fine as long as you're doing a constructive and fair and ideal way. But just to hurl abuse at, especially at your own team, when they're playing one bad quarter or a couple of quarters that aren't going their way, especially in defence, it's such a hard position to play when the midfield's being dominated. Like the Cats midfield was getting dominated. It's not much hope for a defender when the ball's coming in that quick. They've got to reset. They've got to get themselves ready. And sometimes it just keeps coming in. And you're just like, oh shit, I've got to do this again. And yeah, the frustration does get the better of players. And you know what? It's they're people. They're human beings at the end of the day. They're going to make mistakes. Some of them are going to be costly than others. That's the beauty of this game. And I don't think it's fair to feel abuse. It's like, what happens if you have a bad day at work and you make a couple of mistakes? Do you want people coming to the street using you, hurling abuse at you, and following up on social media and continue to hurl abuse and rage at you? No, it wouldn't be pleasant. So I don't think it's fair to do it on them. On the Reece Stanley one, yeah, I could see why the Cats did it. He wasn't having a brilliant night, and it seemed to be the right call. I think the Cats, yeah, he just wasn't have a good night, and it may, pull his head into go. I need to perform better to play a full game again. And Tom Hawkins, that's what Chris Scott said, is that he's having a bad in how many years of football. Lay off him. Don't like he's 30 in his mid 30s, which is pretty old for a football player, which is crazy, but he's having a lean patch. What's the big deal? Why is everyone all of a sudden going, oh, he's done, he's washed? He's still taking the best defender. He's still throwing up other players. I don't know. I think the Cats players are doing fine. They had a bad night. Get on with your life. Has your life changed in any way? No.
And really, they had a bad quarter. At the end of the day, if the game, if the second quarter was the first quarter, I know this is silly hypotheticals, but if the game
Sure.
had started with the second quarter, I think we end up winning that one by 4 goals. If there's another quarter tacked on the end of that, we absolutely got caught with our pants down, and there's no excuses. But yeah, I think it was really that quarter. All the damage was done, and then they had to kick. I said to Jake during the game, I said, from this point on, each of their goals is worth about 3 or 4 of ours. And that's when we said we kind of turned to each other and we said, if we can kick 3 in a row, I think we're back. And that was, and that's kind of the way it played out. Really, was once we did kick 3 in a row, we were right back in it. But their goals were really, like just money in the bank at that point whenever they kicked one. I won't harp on about any of those things too much. Johnny covered it really well about the player abuse. Sometimes I just add context. Like Tom Stewart was tagged. I don't know how many people that complaining about Tom Stewart realized that he was like basically put in a sleeper hold by an opposition player all night and pushed out of it. And that's why I'm assuming that's why they ended up putting him up on the wing after the first quarter to get him away from his tag. And that's why Zach Guthrie, who is definitely in my votes, and I'm assuming is in your votes, why Zach Guthrie also had such a good night, because Tom Stewart was completely handicapped. So, instead of shitting on Tom Stewart, maybe talk about how lucky we are to have Zach Guthrie. And the other thing I would say about what was the other part? Oh, Stanley. I agree. Stanley wasn't having a great night. I suspect it was more about Mullen and Horne-Francis than it was about Stanley. I suspect it was
Mm.
more of a proactive, positive change as opposed to a sort of a yank him. He's having a mare. And I think it's just, I feel like I should talk about it because I defended Stanley strongly after the Melbourne game. But I would say that this maybe gives more clarity to what I was pondering last week, which is that I think Stanley still does terrific work in the ruck. There's people in the media, very high profile people, that are saying Stanley shouldn't play at the top level again, that was basically a public execution, humiliating. He can't show his face in the AFL again. It's not that bad. I think it does throw the clarity that's coming through, is that I think it is the around the ball stuff. It's not his tap work. It's not his work in the ruck. It's not, say, his marking or his kicking. It really is just the speed at which the opposition have decided to play to combat Geelong. It's a bit of the escalation thing. Geelong has brought a game plan to the table, and other teams are now answering with a game plan. And I do think that Stanley can't quite keep up around the ball follow-up efforts after the tap work. But that to me doesn't mean he's done. I think he can, as John said, he can maybe put in some work to improve some of those areas, maybe not. But even so, other games it might be beneficial just to have the best old school ruck we've got healthy and on the list. And a lot of the times this year at the moment, that will be Stanley. So I'm not trying to fully defend him and say he had a terrific game, but he did get 10 hitouts, didn't he? 10 hitouts in basically 10 hitouts in a quarter.
Ball assist.
Like he was
It's-
okay. It wasn't a pantsing. It's just one of those things where you go, I don't think it's so much about him being absolutely terrible. I think they've got to figure out when they need a big tall ruckman and when they need
Yeah.
someone around the ball. And that clearly, very quickly became the case against Port Adelaide. We need to stop Horne-Francis and what else can we do? And so I think it was a proactive move as opposed to a sort of like a sheepish yanking of him from the field.
Well, I think too, the other thing that it did was provide like two problems for Port to deal with. It brought Blixarves into the clearance situation more, and there were so many times he won 20 hitouts, had 5 clearances, and when the Cats were hot and really on top of things, probably late in the third quarter and then across the last term, like there were so many times where Blixarves would compete in the ruck, the ball would hit the deck, and Blixarves is the one winning the clearance or applying a tackle. And then you had the extra problem that they posed to Port in an area of the ground that had been their strength, which was to put an athlete of Jason Horne-Francis's equal on him. And anyone who's watched a lick of Gaelic football knows how explosive O'Shane Mullen is, and his footy ability is rapidly catching up with his raw athleticism. So I think it was a perfect move. It presented a totally different challenge in two areas. And the other thing I'd just say about Stanley too is that, people, will say, oh, he didn't lay tackles, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. Well, he wasn't alone in that first quarter. People conveniently tend to gloss over Brian Myers sort of laying a few one-handed tackles, Max Holmes chasing tail a bit. There was a number of players who really didn't put forward their best efforts across that first quarter. But every year we just rotate to a new scapegoat, because you look at Brian Myers for instance, he was the scapegoat a couple of seasons ago. So I think it's just this petty. The haters always have to find a new target to hate. we're not saying Stanley was playing brilliant, but at the same time, no one in that first quarter was. Someone had to come out. They have some decent cover by putting Blixarves in, and you get to put O'Sheen Mullen in without having, like, who else would you have taken out? You're not going to take Hawkins
Yeah.
out because then
No.
that frees up their best defender to go on to whoever. So yeah, it sort of, it all made sense. What about? It's funny you guys talking earlier about the that thing of being a Cats fan and expecting a win. Like, I've seen a lot of tweets saying, "Oh, got some real alarm bells here." It's like it's a bit of an exposing or whatever. And I'm like, what? A game that we lost by 6 points after trailing by 50? How many teams now? If we'd gone on to lose by 60, 70 points, then that might have been a bit of an exposing. But the Cats had one horrendous quarter, won the rest of the game, and very nearly snatched it. Like, I don't know. I just don't see these games against Melbourne or Port as an exposing. I don't know about you, Sambo. Like, Johnny and I talked a bit about Stangers and stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, it didn't even feel like last season to me, that first quarter. It felt so yeah, so out of character. And there's a lot of things, everyone wants to talk about. Most of the headlines say captainless Port Adelaide. We also were captainless. Like I don't. I'm not trying to make excuses, but if they're going to throw that excuse at us, then we'll also throw it back. So I think the lack of Dangerfield and Bruin at the same time, I think Bruin's influence has been building, and it's probably a little bit underrated how much he has been contributing to that sort of the central sort of area. But I think the speed at which Port and specifically Horn Francis were able to get the ball, luck has a big part of it as well. Much like the umpiring isn't an excuse, but and isn't the reason, but factors in. So does the luck. Like there was just felt like bad AFL 360 physics sometimes when when the ball would come down and just you're like, how did they run away with the ball then? We got the tap and the next possession, and somehow they've just like clipped through us and run away with the ball. But beyond that, like a lot of teams have done that to us. But what Port did was the way they came through the corridor at such speed and so low. Their kicks were so low and completely. They tagged Tom Stewart to take him out of it, and then kicked in such a way that intercept marks were basically impossible unless they miskicked it. So I think it's one of those things that it probably looks bad on the team, looks bad on the defense, and it would have been nice to have shut it down earlier. But with the way it works in coaching, you kind of can't make too many changes during the flow of game. You've got to wait for runners to be able to go out, all that kind of stuff. Not to go all Ross Lyon here and use the runners as an excuse for a loss, but like
just say it 3 times, Sam. Just say it 3
times. But yeah, like to Port's credit, versus versus the Melbourne game, I respect both teams the way they did it, just in very different ways. And Port just hit us so hard and fast straight through the middle. And we just weren't really able to stop it until we were able to, until we did. And again, to put a positive spin on it, everyone's talking about the coaching masterclass of Ken Hinkley, and their plan was really good. But I think you give the next 3 quarters to Chris Scott, because the way we were able to wrestle that game off them, bring it back on our terms, and make a second half look like a Geelong game, I think it's absolutely commendable. And I don't know. I don't have too many things. I think it feels pretty cut and dry the way they did it, the effectiveness with which they were able to do it, and then the way we sort of wrestled it back. I feel like the narrative and the story is there, and it's still pretty good signs for the Cats. I think if this is a pattern, if this is some kind of first quarter pattern that begins to emerge, then that's a worry. But for now, it's just one of those blips that we're going to have to keep in the back of our mind and work on.
9 goals 5 to 3 goals 6 in the second half, Geelong's way. Once the Cats in the same way that, Port, we couldn't really live with how Port played early. Like, I thought we were well the better team, particularly the
Oh,
second half.
definitely.
The second quarter was
Sure.
probably a bit of a draw. If you're rewarding it as a fight card, I'd probably give the third and fourth quarters to Geelong. I'd probably split the second quarter and you'd give the first one to Port,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And you could probably quibble about the third quarter. It was relatively even. So ultimately, it all comes down to a single kick, 2 goals that we let through at the end of a really long quarter, a goal that gets called
Yep.
back. I can understand why it gets called back, but it's
Yep.
fine margins. Johnny, just before we get to player votes, I want to come to you because I feel like this is a topic you've talked about on the pod before. I just wanted to test your temperature on it again. I've seen a lot of tweets about the load management stuff. There's been some fans saying,
Yep.
why on earth would we leave Bose out? Why would we leave Bose out tonight when you've already got the forced absence of Dangerfield and Tanner Bruin? Why would you leave Bose out? Why did we leave Brandon Parfitt out last week? What would you say in that situation? What's your thoughts on it?
Oh, what's Jack Bowes going to make? Yeah, how much of a difference is Jack Bowes going to make in that first quarter? Like, what can one player realistically do in a one quarter? Like, especially when the whole team's getting beaten that badly, what is he going to be able to bring that the others weren't bringing already? And it's that thing as well. It's just like, obviously, this is a plan. This is a set plan they've got in place that have got players they want to rest at certain points of time throughout the season. And it's no matter what the situation, no matter where they are in the ladder, they're just going to go and do it. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I'd rather them give players rests when they've got it planned out or when they think it's the perfect time to rest them. Why not? Because we need to also give games to younger players. Like if Bose was playing, Ocean Mullen most likely would have been on the sub, wouldn't have played. And Horn Francis may have
Jai
continued to
Clark.
dominate and it could have, spiraled out of more control. Yeah, Jai Clark might not have played. And he played a really good game throughout that game. There's a lot of cascading events that happens if you play Jack Bowes over Jai Clark or Ocean Mullen or over some other young guys. I think it's just one of those things where, as you said, Jay, it's like a scapegoat. It's like, what's the reason why we lost? Oh, it's because we didn't have this player. Well, what realistic difference is he going to make to this team in that first quarter? Because I don't think he would have been able to wrestle it. Like it's one of those things like when you're having a bad quarter, when one person, like a few people in the team's having a bad quarter, that can like completely seep out through the entire group quite easily, and everyone just starts having a bad quarter. It's like, what's going on? Why can't we just do what we do? Why is everything we're doing not coming off, not working? And yeah, I don't see any reason why Jack Bowes would have made a difference. And I stick by what the Cats are doing. But I completely trust the Cats process. It's won us many premierships. It kept us in the premiership window for so many years. Last year was just a blip in the radar. And I think, yeah, last 2 weeks, there are a couple of losses. It's not the end of the world. And I just think there's no point on dwelling what could have happened because it's in the past. It's done. Don't let it ruin your weekend. Don't let it ruin your life. Because at the end of the day, it's only a game. It's there for entertainment. And they're just doing a job. Then next week, move on to the next game. Get excited. Get frustrated. Enjoy it. But yeah, I always think,
Yeah.
what's the point in getting frustrated at a game that you have no control over? You can't do anything about when you watch it on TV or, at the game, you can provide that momentum, that energy. At the end of the day, just go, that was that. Let's move on. Let's go have some fun.
Mm.
Let's go drink some beers or have some dinner. Chat it out. Because it's just a game.
Record a podcast about it. Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think too, like it's. Do you have thoughts here, Sambo? I thought I could see you forming a sentence
Nope.
here.
No, all good. No,
Okay, cool.
seven.
I was just going to say
seven wins buys you the luxury to rest players. That's all I would say.
Exactly.
7-2, and I said to someone earlier today, I would have bitten your hand off for 7-3 after 10 games. So like we're a game. We're a game. To advantage in my opinion.
Still,
After last season,
still second on
yes,
the ladder.
and I think you have to look at, like you've said, Johnny, there with Bose. There's a long-term plan. What do we want Bose? Do we want to try and push everyone through every game this season and then get to matches and go? Because the reality is, right, you play Bose against this game, or you play Parfitt last week against the Demons. It's a close game against another contender. You might lose either way. In some ways, you almost want during the season to get more of your best players in for the games like the Suns, the games against the Tigers, because you have to win those. You can't drop them.
Mm.
Like, you're going to win some against your fellow contenders. You're going to lose some. What you want is to win all the other ones you should win, split the others 50-50 or 66-33, and, have everyone healthy for finals. So, anyway, I need to stop talking. And we need to do some votes. But just remember, Cats fans, when you've got Jai Clark in the team, or when you've got whoever it is in the team from the youth side of things, we asked, there were fans asking years ago, play the kids, play the kids, play the kids. Well, they're doing that now. They're trying to get games into Jai Clark and also get some rest into that, age group like your Jack Bowes, Brandon Parfitt, etc. And then, they play Tui and everyone complains and says, why aren't they playing the kids? It's like, well, do you want your cake and to eat it too? Like, there's a plan. This is a coaching group, a coach, and a club who've won 4 flags since 2007. In the time since Port Adelaide last beat us at Kardinia Park, we've won 4 flags from 6 trips to the grand final, and we've won more games than anyone else. So I think sometimes we just need to shut up and just, it's fun to talk about. It's fun to internet debate, but geez Louise, like let's just, anyway.
If footy's
All right,
coaching that
best
easy,
on ground
you gotta do
votes.
it yourself.
That's right. Let's get into some votes, chaps. I'll lead out with mine, and then I'll hand pass to Johnny and then Sambo, and maybe we'll circle back to talk the specifics of performance after we've all done our votes, sort of thing. So I'll just say, for me, Tom Atkins with 1 vote, Tyson Stengel with 2. He was neck and neck with this other player to get the big bag of 3. But he couldn't unseat Zach Guthrie for mine. He gets 3 votes. So I've got Zach Guthrie with the 3, 2 for Stengel, and 1 to Atkins. What about you, Johnny?
I've gone 1 Oisin Mullen, 2 to Zachary Guthrie, and I'm giving my 3 votes to make Sam happy to Gary Rowan.
Makes me very happy. I'm glad you did. I had him in there. I had Gary Rowan in my votes, and you know what I did? I let myself get talked out of it by stupid stats, John. And I'm annoyed at myself because you put him in there, and I'm like, why did I wuss out and take him out there? Because he was in my votes until today when I was writing them down, and I went, oh no, I didn't get a favorable fantasy point.
Not quite enough disposals.
Oh shit! Jamie Carter says he's no good. Hoyne will be unhappy with me. Anyway, so just worth noting that Gary Rowan has some kind of other number of votes. He gets 4 votes from me today, so he's not in the 1, 2, 3, but he gets 4 votes.
It's in your personal
mine.
votes, Sam.
I can rant about that because I can save some time now by saying mine are exactly the same as Jake's. I had Atkins, Stengel, and Guthrie.
Beautiful.
All right, I like that. Johnny, what did you
Yes.
specifically like about Gary Rowan's game?
Well, talking about one player not making a difference in that first quarter, I think Gary Rowan made massive differences in that first quarter. I don't think we would have gotten those 3 goals if it wasn't for Gary Rowan's tackling, pressure, chasing down. And I think he could goal himself in that first quarter as well. And yeah, it's just one of those classic Gary Rowan games that he does love to see. It's not big on the stats. It's not showy. It's not, single-minded just to, show off like your Nick Dacos's or other such players. It's there to play for the team. And all I saw was him playing for the team. He was constantly pressuring, constantly tackling. I think it was our second goal or third goal where a player got tackled. He broke the tackle. Gary Rowan came in and just nailed him perfectly, which led to close passing off the Stangood to get the goal. And it was just like numerous moments like that. It was just like, this is Gary Rowan moments of brilliance and just pure willingness to get to a contest and put pressure on. And I feel like he just did it constantly. And he doesn't, get much love throughout the media or doesn't do much for, as Sam said, stat wise. So he doesn't get much recognition outside of that. But I thought, yeah, he was one of the few players that was switched on from the start and helped the Cats get back into the game.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sambo, you go.
No, I was just gonna launch into mine.
Do it.
And also just talk about Gary Rowan.
I was surprised he wasn't in your vote, Sam, when I saw
Like
it.
I said, he
Oh.
literally. It's honestly. I mean, I'm being facetious about the reasoning behind it about it being AFL fantasy net, but it literally is just that I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh, I feel like I don't know. I just felt pressured. I'm genuinely embarrassed. I feel like I've compromised myself. I should have. I'm
It's a
sorry,
vulnerable
everybody.
No,
moment here for you.
I know.
I saw the
Oh,
stats because I didn't see the stats when I saw my votes. I just like, these are the players and my votes too.
well,
And then I saw the
not
stats earlier
yeah.
and I was like, oh, Gary's only got the low stats. And then I sort of started second guessing myself as well. And it's like, no, I'm
Yeah.
sticking to it.
Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did because it's normally the way I operate too. But I don't know. It's the pressures of being in such a high flying, super just round the globe kind of podcast and
Yeah.
all the millions listening to us. I feel I cracked under the
That's
pressure.
right.
Now look, I'll probably take just quickly say Tom Atkins was just like one of his best of the season. I thought. Obviously, he's tackling 11, team high 11 tackles. In fact, was it game high? It was game high. Game high 11 tackles. Great follow ups. I thought his second efforts were really good. I thought maybe bit unlike Gary Rowan. I thought it did take Atkins that first quarter to get into it. Like I don't think he started super hot. But I think once he was going, he's really going. And I actually thought his composure is something that struck me that maybe wasn't always his strong suit. And I just kind of, seeing him there live and operating in that way compared to say a couple of seasons ago, not necessarily last year, but the year before. He's one of those players now when the ball goes to him, he doesn't just bang it on the boot or panic. He's really able to, take a step, take a side step, feint a hand pass and then pass it out of traffic. I thought he was really, really just good and just demonstrated again the different dimensions that he's added to his game. He's not just a tackling beast or a pressure unit.
Yeah, I love that. I might just quickly talk a bit about Zach Guthrie, and then we'll talk about Tyson Stengel as part of our Patreon player focus. Another player that was close to getting votes but missed out for me was Max Holmes. Thought he played a really good game. But yeah, no, Zach Guthrie. I think there was some chatter about I remember there's always a bit of chatter about this with Tom Stewart of like, oh, but what about his direct opponent or what the goals kicked on. I honestly I don't know enough about the defensive plan that they're using. I know that Guthrie, was playing that sort of Tom Stewart role where he zones off a lot. I think he played out of his skin in that role. I don't think we get back into that game without Zach Guthrie doing the things that he did. He's playing at a really high level to take 7 marks, have 24 touches, which was the most for the Cats. Kicked a goal. That's something I love about his performances. Like he is so willing to just go forward and very calmly boot a crucial goal for the Cats. He obviously kicked the one late against the D's. I think he kicked a nice one against Carlton, and then to go forward and slot the set shot. Was it late in the third quarter? I think Zach Guthrie's goal. It was 29 minutes, 20 seconds in the third quarter. Takes that double 50 and slots the set shot. Just love the way he plays, and so nice to see a former whipping boy now making a name for himself as one of Geelong's first picked and most reliable. So
The stats say Gary Rowan had 0 goal assists. That's
sounds insane to me, but
a load of crap,
That's-
right? I thought he literally kicked and hand passed at 2 separate occasions to set up the next person
I
to
thought
kick the goal.
so too.
I thought
Well, the
so
phone
too,
app doesn't
yeah.
have any meters gained for Jason Horn-Francis, so I'm pretty sure that's incorrect too. All right. That is all for the public part of the show. We've done the Cats v Power round 9 recap. We're going to go over now and do our Patreon player focus on Tyson Stengel. Just chat his year so far and how he played on Friday night. So if you want to hear that part of the show, if you want to watch that part of the show, go on over, sign up for your 7-day free trial on the Hoops Crew Patreon page today. All right. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate it. You know what to do. Until next time, go Cats.
Go Cats.
Go Cats!